Will your star player get 4 more games, be one and done, miss the playoffs entirely? We're going to break down the MLS Cup playoffs, everything we know right now, schedule, who's going to be in it, who might advance. It's all coming right now. Welcome into another video on the channel. This is Chris, the MLS Card Guy. Today, we are going to go through the MLS Cup playoff picture. There's a few things that we know right now. We do know when all the games will be played. We don't know exactly which conference will play in those games, and we don't know exactly which teams will play in those games. So I'm going to do a little bit of forecasting based on my expert knowledge of the MLS, try to get you guys a little bit of an idea of what might be coming over the middle of November. We are going to do a follow-up video to this one as well once we know the exact seeding of the playoff teams and the exact matchups. We will bring all of that to you in a couple of weeks. Decision day is 1 week from this Saturday, so it's November the 7th, I believe, or 6th, somewhere in there. So without any ado, let's go ahead and get into it. We have got the MLS standings right here. So Eastern Conference, first of all. The one team that we know where they're going to be on the playoff bracket is New England. New England will be the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They've already guaranteed the Supporter Shield, so every game they play will be at home. Anyone who wins MLS Cup is going to have to go through New England to do it. So we do know that. That means they get a first-round bye. We're going to go over the playoff bracket here in a little bit. But for now, I just want you guys to pay attention to who's in and who's possibly in and then who's out. So the next team that's in is Nashville. They will be playing in the playoffs, likely to be either the 2, 3, or 4 seed. It's highly unlikely that they drop to a 5, so that means they should get a home game in the first round of the playoffs. They'd have to hold on to that 2 seed to get the home game in the second round of the playoffs. That would be a big thing for them. They are very, very, very hard to beat at home. They're hard to beat anywhere, really. Only 4 losses this year. They just have a ton of draws. So we'll take a look at Nashville a little bit later on as we go. Philadelphia, another team that's slightly separated from the rest of the pack. They are almost guaranteed a playoff spot at this point. It would take a minor miracle for them to not make the playoffs. So Philly should be in there. We'll go through where we have everybody predicted here. And then there's a whole pack here. New York City, Orlando, Atlanta, DC, New York, Montreal, and maybe to some extent Columbus. All of them have pretty decent chance. They all kind of control their own destiny. It just depends on how well they do over these last 2 or 3 games, depending on the teams. So you can see the 2 teams directly below the line each have an extra game in hand on some of the teams that are above the line. So that could make things really, really interesting when we get to the end of the season here, which most of these teams that are 31 games to go, they'll play this weekend, midweek, and then next weekend. So everybody will be done with all 34 games by next weekend. So that's the Eastern Conference. For all intents and purposes, Columbus is likely out. They need to win their final 2 games to have any prayer, and to be honest, I don't think that's going to happen. They're at DC, which obviously I'm a DC fan, so I'm a little bit biased, but I think DC will beat them this weekend and officially knock them out. Miami is also out for all intents and purposes. They're just not mathematically eliminated yet. And then Chicago, Toronto, and Cincinnati are all out. So if you have those guys, they're going to play all those. Actually, Chicago doesn't even have a game this weekend. They just play the last weekend. But all those teams will play this weekend and then next weekend, and then their seasons will be over. So plan accordingly. If you are going to try to sell off your teams, you have 2 more games with players from those teams. Now we go to the Western Conference. Kansas City is in first place. They have surged back up to first. It's been them and Seattle pretty much the entire way. Seattle held on to first place for the first 2 months of the season. Kansas City made a run, and Seattle made a run. Now Kansas City's made another run. Kansas City does have a game in hand. We like their chances to be the #1 seed. Not guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination at this point. Kansas City does still have some teams to get through, but we'll go over all of their. We're going to break down every single game that these teams play for the last 3 or 2 games, depending on the team. And then Seattle and Colorado. These 3 teams will all have home playoff games, pretty much guaranteed at this point. Colorado could lose out to Portland. Actually, no, they can't because Vancouver would have to pass them. So Kansas City, Seattle, and Colorado all will be home playoff games. So a good chance that those 3 teams are going to get 2 playoff games in apiece. You could lose at home in the first round of the playoffs, obviously, but obviously a lot easier to win if you're at home. So we like those teams. Now keep in mind the first place team does get a bye, so that team will not be playing in the first round. So you kind of want your guys to finish second and third. For realistically, second is kind of the best seed to finish because you get that first round home playoff game, you get the second round home playoff game, and then if you get to the conference final, then you're playing the 1 seed anyway. So, well, potentially playing the 1 seed. The 1 seed could always lose. So these 3 teams likely to get home playoff games. Portland, and then it's a whole mess down here. So Portland, Vancouver, LA, RSL, Minnesota, and LAFC. Portland looks like they're in a good place just from the number of games that they have left. They have 2 games left. No one below them can really catch them with any games in hand. They have a decent lead. They have a decent schedule. We kind of like them for the 4 seed, but we'll go through that again as well later. And then Vancouver, LA, Salt Lake, Minnesota, and LAFC. 2 of those teams are going to go home at the end of the regular season. San Jose, Houston, Dallas, and Austin will all be out after next week. Pains me to say, as I have Dallas and Austin's goalkeepers, so I will be completely goalkeeperless in 2 weeks. But we'll figure something out. We always do. So that's kind of the playoff picture here. We're going to go through briefly the schedule because the schedule is very, very, very odd. And I think this will make a little bit more sense when we go through the bracket itself. But we take a look at this schedule. The first 4 games of the first round games are on 1 game week. And then these games are on a Tuesday, so they're actually a different game week. So these are both first round games still, but they'll be on a different game week than the rest of the first round games. And then this is on a Thursday, so it's also in the same midweek game week. So there's going to be 3 games that midweek. There'll be 1 quarterfinal, and then there'll be 2 round of 16 games. So it'll be a really kind of a weird setup for how they scheduled this. And then we'll also go through Western Conference versus Eastern Conference. Just based on these times that they have published, I have a theory that I think the Western Conference games are going to be played first, and then the Eastern Conference games. But we'll go through that as well. So then once we go down here, so this will be a quarterfinal and a midweek. These 2 games are going to be a weekend, so they'll be on their own separate game week. Those are both quarterfinal games, and then this will be another midweek quarterfinal. So the quarterfinals will be spread out over 3 different game weeks. Very, 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 very confusing. Depending on where you're seated, you could be playing on midweeks, you could be playing on weekends. I don't really like the way that they did this, but this is the way that they did it, so that's how we're going to have to adjust. And then the 2 semifinals are both in the same game week, no problems there. And then the final is the following weekend. So, I'm going to go through this bracket really quickly. And actually, while we're here, I'll give you my theory as to why the Western Conference games will go first. So what I'm thinking is these 11-20 games, I think those will be I think the 12 o'clock game has to be an Eastern game. They're not going to put a team on the West Coast playing at 12 o'clock because that would mean that they're playing at 9 a.m. local time, and that just doesn't make any sense. So I think this game right here, the 11-20 game, is going to be the 4 versus 5 for the Eastern Conference. And then I think this game will be a Western Conference game, this is a Western Conference game, and this is a Western Conference game. Because down here, I think 11-25 at 4:30, I think that's a Western Conference game. I think this is the 1 versus 4 for the Western Conference, and then I think this is the 1 versus 4 for the Eastern Conference at 3 p.m. local time. That's a Western Conference game, and that's an Eastern Conference game, is what I'm thinking just based on the times. 5:30 definitely seems like a West game. They love to start West Coast games at 5:30 because the East Coast will all be watching, but it's not too early for the West Coast that are actually at the stadium. And then I think this would be the Western final, this would be the Eastern final, which is at 3 p.m., which is a kind of a normal Eastern time start. The only weird one is this would be a Western Conference game, which would be a 12 p.m. local, so that kind of matches up with the Eastern Conference game up here. So that's my theory, completely based on nothing but just speculation on the times here. But that's what I think we're going to go with, so that's what I based all of the projections off of. So we're going to go into the projections here. And I tried to break this down so you guys could visually see how this is going to work. So We already know New England is the number one. They're going to play in this pink game. So the pink game should occur in game week 222, which is the 26th through the 29th. These are all the notes that I made about what I think, like which teams I think are going to play, but I think it's easier to see it down here. So the first game week, we think it'll be all 6 of the Western Conference teams, so 2 through 7 in the Western Conference, and then we think it'll be the 4-5 game in the East. So over here, Atlanta and NYCFC. And then the blue games here will be the rest of the round of 16 games from the East, and then the 1 versus 4 game from the West. So rest-wise, I think this game gets played next, Colorado-Seattle, and then New England-Atlanta would be the same day. Of the quarterfinals, there's 4 quarterfinals, and they're on 3 different game weeks, so it's crazy. But then once we get to the conference finals, we know both of those teams. If your team's in the conference final, 100% you're playing on game week 224. If your team makes the MLS Cup final, 100% you're playing on 226. So I hope that gives you guys an idea of what we're looking at here. Most of the first round games are going to take place on 220. A couple of them, 2 of them for sure, are going to take place on 221. And then I would guess one of these 2 1 seeds will play on 221. The other will play on 222, along with the other quarterfinal, whichever it might be. And then, like I said, the final is all theirs. So, we've gone through the schedule. I want to go through a little bit. This is my predictions here. SKC is currently the 1. I think they win that one. Seattle's currently the 2. I think they hold on to that. Colorado is currently the 3. I think they hold on to that. Portland is currently the 4. I think they hold on to that. I think Vancouver is 7th, maybe. I think they jump up a couple of spots just based on the last couple of games. RSL would then be the 6th seed. Vancouver would be the 5th seed. RSL the 6th seed. And Galaxy would just sneak in over El Tráfico rival LAFC as the 7th seed. But really jam-packed in there. A whole bunch of teams could all make the playoffs. A whole bunch of teams could just lose twice and completely miss the playoffs. So it's a really exciting time in MLS right now. A ton of teams are in this thing still. We're going to go through the playoff games just briefly here. SKC gets a bye. I like Vancouver on the road at Portland. Again, I think Vancouver's pretty hot. I think they're a good team. I don't have anything against Portland. They're a very good team as well, but on the road, I got to pick at least a couple of upsets. So we'll pick Vancouver. Colorado's too much for RSL. I don't think that one's close. Seattle and LA. I almost picked LA Galaxy in this game. I don't know that I trust Chicharito enough. I don't know that they have enough playmaking up top. I'm going to take Seattle. Seattle is not hot right now, though, so always seems to be around playoff time. They get really hot. It hasn't really happened this year. Could happen in the playoffs, but I don't know. So we're going to take SKC over Vancouver. SKC is a class team. While I think Vancouver's good, I don't think they go on the road to Sporting and get a result. Colorado goes to Seattle and gets a result. I really like Colorado, and you can see that I picked them here over SKC as well. I just love the pieces that Colorado has, and they're a really dark horse team to win MLS Cup for me. I love their midfield. They have so much talent, so much depth everywhere. If they play up to their potential and all of their guys are healthy, I'm looking at you, Keegan Rosenberry, they could be a really good team. On the other side, New England gets a bye. We like Atlanta at home against NYC. NYC always seems to lose a playoff game, like they should have a decent chance at, but they've never been any good in the playoffs. Atlanta going to Atlanta in a playoff game, I just can't see that. Atlanta's been way too hot since the middle of the season. I think they'll win this game. Philly DC, I'm not a homer at all, but I'm going to pick DC over Philly at Philly for no other reason than I think DC is really good, and I think they'll win at least one playoff game. Whoever they face in the first round, I think this team is built to go on the road and score goals. So, I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Nothing against Philadelphia. They're a good team, but I don't think they're a great team. So, picking DC as the upset there. And then Nashville over Montreal. Again, this could be Orlando here. Either way, it's in Nashville. Love Nashville in Nashville. Completely unbeatable. Nashville moves on. They smoke DC United. We actually have played 2 games against them, and they've been very, very weird games. We lost to them 5-2 in Nashville, but it was really a lot closer than that, and then we drew 0-0 in DC. So we've played a defensive game against them. We played an offensive game against them. Be interesting to see what kind of game. I would expect that to be more offensive since it's at Nashville. Nashville likes to come out and play at home, so I would think that would be a higher scoring game, but I think Nashville still wins it. New England over Atlanta. This, I could see Atlanta winning this game. Atlanta is white hot. New England would be coming off of a absolutely long bye. If you take a look at the games, I think they're off like 3 weekends in a row between international break and getting a bye in the first round. I think they don't play for like 20 days. It's like a long, long time. To come out in a playoff game, now they will be at home, to come out in a playoff game against a team that just played a playoff game and won, that's a trap game for New England for sure, because whoever gets that 4 seed is going to be hot. They're going to be full confidence. They're going to have just won a game in the playoffs. So I don't love New England actually in these playoffs, which might surprise a few of you. I've watched like 4 or 5 New England games recently, and they're very good, but it seems like they're only good for like 20 minutes at a time. And I feel like that can really come back to bite you in the playoffs. When you're playing really, really good teams, if you only play well for 20 minutes, even if it's a really good 20 minutes, they might still be able to capitalize. And that's what I think happens in this Nashville-New England game. Like I said before, New England has not beaten Nashville this year. Even if this is in Foxborough, I like Nashville a lot. I think they're going to win MLS Cup over Colorado. That is the final game of the bracket. So we're going to pull it back out here. That was a ton of information. That was predictions on my part. That was a little bit of what's happening here. Like I said, you can go through all those teams that are already eliminated at the bottom. Those guys, there's no relegation in MLS, so you don't have to worry about anybody getting relegated. But those guys will all be done for the year after next weekend. I think that's going to do it for the video today, guys. Really appreciate all of you guys watching the video, subscribing to the channel, liking everything. You guys are really, really the best. This has been awesome last couple months here. We've really, really grown a lot. I love getting to interact with you guys on the Discord, on Twitter. I might start trying to do some Reddit here maybe. So we'll take a look at that, but I really, really like to interact with you guys, help you guys out with your teams. If you have questions, please, please, please reach out to me. But until the next time, Vamos United.